It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. Nurses at a hospital in Madison plan to walk off the job starting Tuesday after negotiations on a new union contract failed to reach an agreement earlier this week.
The hospital management of UnityPoint Health Meriter and the labor group Service Employees International Union, or SEIU Wisconsin, are divided over pay, the ratio of patients under a nurse's care, and other issues. The union represents over 900 nurses at the hospital.
To hear the perspective of the union, we turn to Lewis Davis, Executive Director of SEIU Wisconsin, which represents about 7,000 service and healthcare workers across the state. Lewis, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you for having me.
What working conditions led to talks of a strike?
Well, I just think fundamentally nurses at Meriter Hospital, their dedication to their patients and their aspiration for better patient outcomes is at the heart of driving the working conditions and making sure that every patient had the adequate amount of nurses and staffing. And obviously that has impact on the ability of nurses to deliver care when they're overloaded with patients. Fundamentally, you mentioned it just earlier on, when it comes to workplace safety, it's not only security incidents that occur in the hospital where nurses fall victim to assaults, but when visitors are a risk for safety in the hospital, for nurses and other workers there, they're risk for patients. And fundamentally, our members just believe that at the end of the day, if the hospital and management won't center the patients and no one's going to listen to patients and what will make sure that they're safe, that any Dane County resident that goes to Meriter can be safe and guarantee their safety when they're getting care and that they get the quality care that they deserve, that those are the drivers of the working conditions that we have been centering since the beginning of our bargain.
I'm hearing safety come up here. And you say you started contract negotiations with a simple demand, listen to nurses. Can you elaborate? What does listen to nurses mean?
At the end of the day, we believe that management has very nuanced and detailed understanding of finances and how to run a very expensive and large corporation in UnityPoint that delivers healthcare. But the person who knows the best about how to deliver the best patient care are the nurses that are at the bedside. So when we are saying listen to nurses, we're saying listen to the caregivers that are at the bedside of the patients. Listen to the feedback that they have to how to improve the overall safety, how to improve the staffing at the hospital, and all of the other myriad of concerns and procedures that impact the quality of care that patients get. So when we say listen to nurses, we're saying listen to the folks that are actually at the bedside and are not in their executive suites.
Lewis, pay also factors into this new union contract. What is the union asking for here?
I think at the end of the day, what we have asked for is extremely reasonable. We're aware of both the profitability of UnityPoint and Meriter. We're also aware and mindful of both the regional and national economic conditions in this moment. What we're asking for is less than, to be clear, what the nurses have gotten in prior years. But fundamentally, in terms of across the board, what we're asking for is a very reasonable raise that makes sure that talented nurses who have been at this hospital for decades or longer and have expertise that can retain those, and you can continue to recruit talented nurses into Meriter Hospital that serves as a community hospital for not only Madison, but the whole of Dane County and South Central Wisconsin. So that's what we're asking for. Wages that recruit and retain talented nurses. But first and foremost, we are asking that not in isolation, but with a full awareness and context of the economic conditions that we're in as a country and we're in as a state and county.
What is a reasonable raise?
We believe a reasonable raise is what we have, not what management has proposed, which continues to be 2.5% across the board raise is just fundamentally inadequate. It doesn't meet not only the cost of inflation, but that's certainly not the type of raise that would retain talented nurses or recruit them. And again, what we've asked for is less than what the nurses received in the first year of their last contract. So we're being very reasonable.
Let's look at timeline here. UnityPoint Health Meritor is expressing concern that SEIU is not returning to the bargaining table before Tuesday's planned strike. Said in a statement to WPR, quote, allowing the strike to proceed without exhausting every opportunity to reach agreement is not in the best interests of anyone, not the union, our team members, or the community we both serve, end quote. Why won't you keep negotiations going before the planned strike?
I mean, I think that is entirely disingenuous for management to misrepresent their actual position. We bargained over 20 sessions since January, making our demands for safety and staffing at the center. Those are not new. Those have not changed. Since we've served our strike notice, we agreed to multiple dates, and we have bargained. In fact, on Monday, when we had our last scheduled session, we implored management to continue to bargain. The last time, 2 years ago, we reached a tentative agreement. Both parties were able to do that because both parties were committed to stay as long as it took, and it took the late hours of the night, but we got a deal done. Management chose to walk away from the table early Monday evening and not stay dedicated to finding a resolution. The nurses are clear. We have availability next week. We're willing to come to the table, but at the end of the day, management continues to not make movement in the areas, and for them to sit at the table and to just close their ears and ignore and not listen to nurses is not a constructive relationship and misrepresents their actual position. But they've had every single opportunity to actually listen to the nurses and avoid labor disruption.
Lewis Davis is executive director of SEIU Wisconsin, which represents hundreds of nurses, of hospital nurses at UnityPoint Health Meritor in Madison, which has a planned strike starting Tuesday. Lewis, what is the sticking point here? What is holding this back?
We believe that management and the union can get close and reach fair wages and economics. We have been unionized for decades. That's not at the front end in concern. Like, the primary concerns continue to be staffing ratios and safety, and the hospital has either outright refused to engage with the nurses, the folks at the bedside, to have constructive conversations around what leads to actual safety in the hospital for their patients and themselves, and actual adequate staffing so they can give the quality of care that Dane County residents deserve. Those are the sticking points. If management refuses to listen to nurses and patients, we will fight for our patients. We will fight to make sure that patients get the adequate care that they deserve at that hospital. So we are willing to strike over it, and we are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that Meritor Hospital is a safe place to work, a safe place to get care, and Meritor Hospital is a great place to get care with adequate staffing.
When we reached out to the hospital for comment, they sent us a written and a video statement from Sherry Casali, the Market Chief Nursing Officer at UnityPoint Health Meritor. And let's listen to some of what she had to say.
We've been in a union environment for decades, since back into the 1970s, and know that a strike could happen. We always work very, very hard to avoid that. I think both parties would prefer not to have a strike.
Both parties would prefer not to have a strike. it doesn't sound like this is the sentiment I'm hearing from you.
Of course, like we reached, including on Monday, we approached every bargain, again, the over 20 sessions that we have had as our primary goal to reach a fair tentative agreement. That is always our goal, just like on Monday, where we were dedicated to stay at the table as late as it took to reach that fair tentative agreement. That is always our goal. But what is uncompromising is we're not willing to compromise on the safety or the quality of care that the patients deserve because management refuses to listen. But we believe a fair tentative agreement is possible, and that is always our goal.
Louis, will nurses receive any compensation from the union for lost wages during a 5-day strike?
Yes. Striking is an incredible sacrifice that these nurses are courageous and willing to take. But our union allows for strike pay that minimizes or helps lessen the financial cost and impact, but by no means does that replace the wages. This incredible sacrifice and courage it takes to take this sacrifice and to stand for their patients. So our nurses will and are willing to take that sacrifice, and our strike pay is just a small modicum of compensating them for the incredible financial loss that they're going to incur for standing up for their patients.
Louis, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That is Louis Davis, Executive Director of SEIU Wisconsin. It's a labor union that represents thousands of healthcare industry workers in Wisconsin. We've been talking about hundreds of nurses who plan to go on a 5-day strike starting Tuesday after talks over a new contract broke down with hospital management at UnityPoint Health Meritor in Madison earlier this week.
Coming up on Wisconsin Today, a new report calls for more training to prepare math teachers for the classroom. We'll hear from 2 Wisconsin math teachers working to help their newest colleagues.
We're trying to help get kids to think about math instead of just memorizing information or formulas.
That's next here on WPR News. It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. An elementary school in Grant County has changed its approach to teaching math, and it's paid off. Nearly 80% of the students at Winskill Elementary School are at grade level. That's double the state average. Corrine Hess explains how the school did it.
It's a Tuesday morning, and 5th grade teacher Missy Spurley greets her students with a math problem.
So everybody know what a budget is?
In this hypothetical scenario, teachers at the school went shopping and had lunch.
Logan, what's the budget?
But they exceeded their $60 budget. Now it's up to the students to figure out how much each teacher spent.
So everyone needs to be a part of this. Maybe have a plan of what you're going to do.
Gone are the days of sitting in rows and working on math worksheets. For the last several years, the Grant County Elementary School has reimagined how math is taught. This problem gets students working together and out loud. That's one part of the school's new approach, and it's working. When Principal Brad Sturmer arrived at the school 8 years ago, fewer than 40% of the students were proficient in math, matching the state average. Now, nearly 80% of the students at Winskill are either advanced or meeting expectations in math, according to the latest Department of Public Instruction report card. It's one of the state's top schools for teaching math, and Sturmer says its approach is one that could work anywhere.
It comes down to teaching the why behind mathematics, how things work, not just teaching tricks. That's a big mistake that people make.
Sturmer says Winskill focuses on teaching math and made sure its teachers were using the latest evidence-based practices not just teaching the same way they learned when they were in school. Sturmer says the changes he and the staff made at Winskill were substantial, but not difficult.
I recognize not all schools are fortunate enough to have the strength that we do. But there are a lot of schools that have a ton of great people. And then it just comes down to, like I say, your structures and systems that you do.
The fifth graders in Spurley's class work in small groups at large whiteboards around the room to come up with their budget answers.
I got 68 and 8 cents.
Spurley says when students are standing, they're more engaged. And when the work is on large whiteboards, students can learn from each other. Spurley was about 10 years into her teaching career when she realized she might not be teaching correctly.
Then we had some professional development, and that helped a lot. And then as I started learning more, I started realizing how there's just better ways of doing things. And we need to change what we're doing to meet our kids where they're at.
Winskill math teachers meet weekly to make sure they're on the same page and students will move seamlessly to the next grade level. For example, the children in Maria Camp's kindergarten class started the day with true-false. So did Carly Enlow's third graders. It just looks and sounds a little different.
Just what me think it is.
Using Cookie Monster, wooden sticks, and songs, the 5-year-olds can see and feel the math in Camp's softly lit classroom.
If I have 6 and I subtract 5, I'm going to match them up.
Upstairs, third graders in Enlow's class also kick off the day with true-false problems, but at a faster pace.
10 times 8 times 2 equals 180. Decide if that is true or if that is false. Okay, show me your thumb.
National experts say Winskill's approach can work at other schools. They say one key to good outcomes is making sure teachers have content knowledge and an understanding of the best instructional methods of teaching math. Corinne Hess, Wisconsin Public Radio.
This is Wisconsin Today.
Now, Wisconsin's 4th and 8th graders are overall ahead of the national average when it comes to math scores on standardized tests. But the state continues to have one of the widest disparities in scores along racial and ethnic backgrounds.
And a new report by the National Council on Teacher Quality found only 1/8 of colleges are adequately preparing incoming teachers on how to teach math.
But what does teaching math in Wisconsin schools feel like in the classroom?
2 math teachers join us now. They're both members of the Wisconsin Mathematics Education Foundation. Deb Heitman is a 5th grade teacher and math instruction coach for the Coleman School District, and Steve Aiken is a high school math teacher for the Northern Ozaki School District. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And Deb, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I want to talk about what goes into math teacher education at each of the levels you work at. Deb, let's start with you. Upper elementary school, what kind of training does that teacher need to be successful in the math classroom?
Well, in recent years, I think a good training, first of all, is really knowing our content. And that kind of comes through professional development, but also in our educational schools. And kind of having an open mind that it's not just memorization anymore. And instead, we're trying to help get kids to think about math instead of just memorizing information or formulas, but rather thinking about ideas and how numbers are structured. And all that kind of came for me, I guess, through teaching all these years.
And Steve, at the high school level, what do things look like for teacher preparation in the math class?
Well, thankfully, nothing is really different for a high school math teacher. We have to know our content. We also are given plenty of instruction about how to include all kinds of students, how to structure a lesson, and we're given student teaching as an experience, of course, before we graduate. I think what we get as an undergrad experience is enough. I would think, though, that we could improve it if we could have some mentoring that bridges from the undergrad to the in-classroom first year, second year, third year professional experience, because those are clearly the hardest years. And there are things you just can't teach. So if a student's having a bad day and the teacher can't diagnose that and doesn't know how to respond, it'd be nice if there was an experienced teacher nearby who could say, hey, come here, let me just point out what I see, and here's a nice way to respond to that. And I'm not speaking for Deb on that. I just think that would have really helped me and some of my colleagues at the high school level.
Deb, what do you think of that idea, that new teacher, maybe just out of college, having that kind of mentoring in the math class?
Oh, absolutely. Math classrooms nowadays definitely look different from when I was younger. So to be able to see it in action is very different than just hearing about it, because also we need to be able to ask the questions to get the students thinking, which is something I had to learn through the years and didn't come naturally at first, or really wasn't taught how to do that, to be able to get what we're hoping the kids are, their reasoning skills are in different answers.
And Steve, do you see this kind of thing happening? I know you're both with a statewide organization. Do you see some of that kind of mentoring happening in some districts, or is there, in your view, a lot of opportunity to do more of that?
Well, let me do a shameless plug, first of all, for our WMC Connect program. We do reach out to new educators and try to get that kind of thing happening, where we meet in the evenings and try to meet regularly and just listen. What are you going through? What would you like as resources to help out and that kind of thing? But the idea to do like a formal in-classroom mentoring program, actually, I stole that from Michigan. A friend of mine was born and raised in Michigan, and he said that training program is phenomenal over there. And they, in fact, do a good job, from their estimation. I just think it would really grease the skids, because a teacher walks into a classroom with somewhere between 25 and 35 different students, and each of them is dozens of variables that walk in with them in terms of personal life, expectations of the classroom experience, levels of skill, energy level. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it really takes a good amount of time to dial that in as a professional, to know how to carefully respond to that in a way that's loving and supportive and consistent.
Part of why we're talking to the two of you right now is we see this report from the National Council on Teacher Quality saying, hey, only 1/8 of our colleges that teach teachers are spending enough time preparing new teachers on how to teach math to young students. It's split schools here in Wisconsin, the way they rate them. Deb, what do you think about what colleges are doing to prepare teachers to teach math? Is there enough time going into that kind of instruction?
I have a unique experience, as Steve was mentioning, about the state of Michigan. That is where I got my undergraduate from. And at that time, we kind of did have a little bit more. As far as in the state of Wisconsin, I don't have quite as much experience. However, I guess to be part of those any type of mentorship and spend a little bit more time in the classroom to see how it's actually done would definitely be helpful, especially in our elementary schools, where our focus is so much on literacy and ELA.
And Steve, your thoughts on how our undergraduate educational institutions are doing on preparing teachers for that math class?
I just want to start by saying the minimum, in my perception, the minimum a student should be entering a classroom with to become a teacher, is a couple years of undergrad before their student teaching. I don't know if we should have teachers in front of kids with less than an undergraduate degree, because there's a lot to what we do, as I mentioned earlier. And if we could get a mentor who is in context, talking about those kids and that lesson in that moment, and what works and what doesn't and what needs improvement, I think we can get a lot of change. In fact, probably see a change in that data you referred to earlier.
Now, you're both math teachers. I'm guessing you've encountered people, maybe students, maybe other grown-ups saying this to you at some point, I'm just not good at math, right? This idea that some of us are inherently bad at math. Deb, what do you say to people, in particular your students, to make the case that no, in fact, they are capable of learning math?
I happen to have a poster in my room that says, how to be a math person. Step 1, be a person. Step 2, do any type of math. And we kind of always come back to that no matter what we're doing, even if it's something as simple as playing a logic game, we're all math, because we're using those critical thinking skills. And that's what I've told to adults. I also have a shirt with the same thing, who will look at me and might say, I totally disagree with your shirt. And that's usually what I tell them. But we're always doing math, whether we might be in a store estimating. If we're just playing those logic style games, even online, we're still using those critical thinking skills that math helps provide for us.
We'll leave it there. Deb, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And Steve, thanks for being with us.
Honored to be a part of the show.
We're talking about the state of mathematics education in Wisconsin. That was Deb Heitman, fifth grade teacher and math instruction coach for the Coleman School District, and Steve Aiken, high school math teacher for the Northern Ozaukee School District. Now we turn to the Department of Public Instruction for a statewide perspective. Mary Mooney is a math education consultant with the Department of Public Instruction. Mary, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Now, in 2023, Governor Evers signed Act 20 into law. That established a state literacy department and set some standards for reading skills. Well, that's reading. What, if anything, is the state's role when it comes to how math education is handled around the state?
That is a really interesting question, and one that my colleague and I are really wrestling with right now. Mathematics, honestly, is used to being maybe second to literacy. We know literacy is very important, but many times that just leaves mathematics in this strange, difficult space where many people don't really tackle it. But it's starting to get some noticing about what do we do about what literacy is considered in mathematics. How do we think about how students understand numbers and understand mathematics? So we are really starting to think about what would that look like, because it's not literacy. We have to do something different. We're just wrestling with what that's going to look like moving forward.
The latest round of state tests found what lots of rounds of state tests do on math. We look pretty good in Wisconsin on average compared to the rest of the country, but we have one of the biggest racial disparities for math scores and math outcomes. What are you and your colleagues looking at when it comes to helping schools tackle those disparities we have?
Well, I think one of the very first things we're doing is really digging into the data to show us what those gaps look like. We do have racial and ethnicity gaps. We do have gaps in our students who are economically advantaged and those who are economically disadvantaged. We do have that with our students in special education and the students not receiving special education. So we first have to understand where the gaps are, because each group of students will likely need something quite different. And then getting into what that is can be very complicated. As you can imagine, there's a lot of factors that go into how students perform on a test. One is the test itself. Do we have the right test that is measuring what the students really know and can do? So we wrestle with that at the state level. But we also think about what are those instructional practices? What are the materials? What do the students need at the classroom level that could come in terms of looking at what materials are in front of them? What are the instructional practices? What do the students feel like when they're in math class? Emotions have a lot to do with learning mathematics. So we have a lot of factors to explore. And right now we're really just kind of thinking about where is our capacity to dig in and what's going to give us the most bang for our buck to make a difference in those gaps.
You're at the Department of Public Instruction now. I understand you were an educator yourself before your time at DPI. With both of those backgrounds, what are your thoughts on teacher training and preparedness? What kind of things do we need to do to make sure that teachers are coming into math class as prepared as they can be?
Oh gosh, this is really tough because what I'm going to say seems really broad, but I really think it's at the heart of what we need to do in teacher education. We need to help future teachers see that there might be a chance the way that they were taught in mathematics is not really best practice, and perhaps we need to do things a little bit differently. We often talk about how one of the greatest predictors of how you teach is how you were taught. And that shows up a lot. It showed up in my practice. I taught like I was taught because it worked for me, but I quickly realized it didn't work for all of my students. So I had to think about changing how I taught so that my students would have a greater chance at learning the mathematics. So I think essentially what a prep program needs to do is really help teachers start to be reflective of themselves as a student and be open to considering their impact on their students, not just duplicating how they were taught, but really think about how am I teaching now impacting the students with their learning.
Just talked to a couple of math teachers. The idea came up, they were very enthusiastic about it, of more mentorship for that new teacher, right? They've done their college work, they've done their student teaching, but that first 1, maybe up to 3 years partnering with that senior teacher to bounce ideas off, learn the classroom management skills and educational skills in math. Is that something you see potential for in Wisconsin?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, like if you are really trying to think about to break a cycle of how you were taught yourself, it helps to have someone else in the room. Because I will tell you, if you have not been in front of 30 teenagers trying to teach them math, sometimes autopilot takes over. And it's very difficult when you're young, you're nervous, or not so much young, but even new to teaching. You can be nervous and you might not be aware of how your practices are landing on the students. And then you add in classroom management, you add in expectations of the adults in the building. So you really need some mentorship to kind of help you navigate the different challenges for sure.
Mary, thanks a lot for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Mary Mooney is a math education consultant with the Department of Public Instruction. We've been talking about math education in Wisconsin. We also heard from teachers Deb Heitman from the Coleman School District and Steve Aiken from the Northern Ozaukee School District. You can share your math learning or teaching stories. What worked for you? What did you run into trouble with? What could have gone better? Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. Again, that's wisconsintoday@wpr.org.
Coming up, Northland College holds its final commencement this weekend. As it closes, find out what's next for the community and current students.
Many of them came here because they love Northland or have grown to love Northland, and so it's bittersweet that they'll find a new home, but their degree won't be with us.
That's next on Wisconsin Today. It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. This Saturday marks the last commencement ceremony for students at Northland College. The private liberal arts school in Ashland on Lake Superior is set to close at the end of the month.
The college had faced financial troubles for years. The Northland Board of Trustees announced in February that the college would close after 133 years because of rising costs and declining enrollment.
We're taking a look at the school's legacy and the impact of its closure. Barb Lundberg is the interim president of Northland College, and Matthew McKenzie is mayor of Ashland. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for asking.
And Barb, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, great to be here with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Barb, I'm sorry about the circumstance we're here with now. A final commencement address this weekend for Northland College. Can you just talk about the feeling on campus as you enter into, in effect, the last week there?
Well, Rob, I think the feeling is for the students who will be graduating, having this additional year to be able to complete their degrees with the faculty that they've been working with. I think there's some excitement there, but there's also, a lot of feelings of loss, for the faculty and staff who are losing their positions here, the college that they love, and also, so for many of the students who aren't able to graduate and have to find new homes, it's really difficult.
And Matt, you've been in Ashland for quite a while yourself. You're the mayor there. This has been part of the Ashland community Northland has for 30-ish years or so. What does it mean? What are the feelings around town over this loss of this institution?
It's kind of surreal yet at this point. I mean, it's hard to imagine Ashland without Northland College. They've been so intertwined over the years. So it's hard to even almost accept it, that it's going to actually happen. So depending on where you go, Northland is very well represented here. A lot of our citizens have gone to school there, and it's a sad day to see it happen, actually.
Barb, turning to some of the practical side here, you mentioned the students. How are things going as these students who have been in their first 3 years look to complete their education?
Well, Rob, we had to find some other schools that might be willing to take them and help them complete their degrees. So there's about 150 students who aren't graduating that need to find new homes. And fortunately, we had so many institutions step up to try to help these students find a place that might be a good fit for them. We have over 10 what are called teach-out agreements in place and confirmed through our accreditors. And then in addition, we had over 40 colleges and universities show up for a transfer fair with us in early March. And another, I think about 30 institutions came and participated in a virtual fair. And so we've been doing those sorts of things to help the students transition. And of course, they have faculty that they've been working with for these past few years and advisors, everybody trying to help them find a new place. But of course, it's very difficult because many of them came here because they love Northland or have grown to love Northland. And so, it's bittersweet that they'll find a new home, but their degree won't be with us.
Matt, on the economic side of things, this leaves a hole, I imagine, for Ashland and the surrounding community. What do you look at when you look at the economic impact of the loss of Northland?
Yeah, that's a tough one to get our arms around. We're not sure. Obviously, it's going to have an effect on our economy, and for how long, we're not sure. When you take 160 basically people out of the workforce, and our workforce is not large compared to perhaps some of the places in the southern part of the state, so it's going to be an adjustment period for us, and we're not sure what it's going to all bring. It's obviously going to have effect on our economy, and also our housing situation. There's plenty of students that live off campus that aren't going to be here now, and that's going to be some adjusting.
Barb, again, on the practical side of things, a college is, of course, the people, but it's also land and structures. What is happening with the future of the physical infrastructure of what has been Northland College?
Right now, our focus these last 3 months, and it's only been 3 months since the announcement of closure, has really been on the people side of things. So the students, the faculty and staff, the people who are losing their positions. But along the way, we're also working on other things, and that has included getting some of the real estate ready to sell. We have put up some of the ancillary properties, such as the president's house and some vacant lots that we have. There's some other little houses that are contiguous to the campus that will be going up for sale soon. We have some folks living in them, so we're trying not to displace them before that moves forward, and conducting an appraisal of the campus. So there's a lot of pre-work that is happening now. And so we're still in that phase, trying to get our students graduated and transferred. And next week is the last week for a lot of our employees at the college. So that's where the majority of our focus is, but we'll be transitioning, as the summer comes along.
And Matt, on the city side of things, are you partnering with, people leaving Northland College, with community groups, businesses, things like that, to create a vision for a post-Northland College future in Ashland?
Of course, we support Northland College, and a year ago we reached out and did a fundraiser too to show support for them. It's tough for us to get involved in some of that process that you're talking about. Our economy is not huge, and there's only so many positions to go around, and we're looking for what we can, but it's not an easy thing to do, I guess.
We're talking about the legacy of Northland College, liberal arts university, south of Lake Superior. It's set to close at the end of the month. We have Barb Lundberg with us, interim president of Northland College, and Matthew McKenzie, mayor of Ashland. I want to talk about the environmental legacy that Northland College is known for. Barb, what do you worry we lose without Northland College and all the environmental work it's done over the decades?
Oh, the one thing I would say is, first of all, because we've been rooted here for so many years and the environmental focus has been around for over 50 years now, we were leaders in that area. So the one thing that we do have is the legacy of the people who have gone through our programs here, stayed in our area, and also influenced, some of the local and regional nonprofit entities. We have a lot of folks working for Fish and Wildlife, the DNR, tribal natural resources all over. So we have some of that legacy here. And so that really is something that we're proud of and we're happy about. I think the piece, in addition to being an educational institution that offers four-year degrees, our students also were able to participate in a lot of research activities with our faculty, with our Sigurd Olson Environmental Institute, with our Mary Griggs Burke Center for Freshwater Innovation. And so there's been a lot of things that have been offered to our region and our communities from the college and our centers. And so hopefully we will have some nonprofits and people who can carry on that work. And so we are hopeful that that will be the case. We want to see that work continue. I think it's important to our region and something that is highly valued.
And Matt, I understand in another life you were a warden for the DNR. Do you have thoughts on Northland College and the role it's played in environmental research?
Well, I think Northland College has played a role in this, and honestly, our community up here, there's not many people that do not make their living involved with the natural resources, and it's very important for all of us. And the protection of it, Northland has been instrumental in doing studies to document some of the programs that are currently used actually worldwide. So that's going to be a huge loss there, too.
Barb, there was some hope that, or I've heard anyway, that like the Sigurd Olson Environmental Institute, maybe some of the other institutes might spin off into a new incarnation. Do you have any details on that you could share at this point, or is that still up in the air?
Yeah, I think the one thing that people, it's good to understand is that the centers, whether it's our food center here, our Indigenous Culture Center, what's called Burke Center, Sigurd Olson Environmental Institute, are all centers under the college. So they're all part of the unfortunate closing of the college. So really where the hope lies is in external nonprofits, people coming together to carry on that work. And so that is what will be important going forward.
Matt, looking toward the future, having a college, a unique college like Northland can do a lot to set up the identity of a community. What kind of things are you and the people of Ashland thinking about of what you build your future around, how you sell your community to maybe potential people moving in, to tourists and otherwise? What's your hope for placemaking in Ashland in the future?
I think Ashland's been somewhat progressive all along as far as looking at development and doing it in smart ways. And obviously Northland has been a part of that. And with that, I guess the biggest loss as I see is the young people that it brought to our community and the culture that helps us develop that we may not have exposure to. So I think one of the things this is going to do is make us sit down and start to figure out a way that we can attract more young people to our area and, to keep that going, to keep us vibrant.
Barb, you are sadly not the only college, private or public, that's shut down in Wisconsin in recent years. Do you have thoughts that you'd want to share with people maybe at a small liberal arts college elsewhere in the state or the country, how to handle what is a difficult time for institutions of higher learning?
I think you've hit on a good point there. Northland College is a private nonprofit institution. And so our funding streams, are really more tuition driven and through donations and endowments and so on. Whereas other public institutions, such as our technical colleges in the state and our public universities, have other sources of funding. They may have what the three-legged stool for technical colleges, where you have funding from the state, from local taxpayers, tuition, et cetera, where we don't have that. So, the models are a little bit different, but I do know that funding over the past decades, whether you're a public or private, has decreased at various levels, including with the state. One thing that I think Northland really excelled at and really fit the niche for a lot of people was in the experiential education that we have here. So with so many students, we have right now what's called our May term. We're in the final week of our May term. And in the May term, it's a 1-month term of 4 weeks where people take one course, and it may be in ornithology, and they get up really early in the morning before dawn, and they go out for 4 days or 5 days a week and go study birds in the field. Or in the past, people have circumnavigated the lake and done some experiential learning. And if we all think back to our own college education and try to remember the things that we studied, whether it was math or English or psychology or something, the things that you tend to remember are the things that Northland was really great at. Having committed faculty, small classes, interactions with other students from across the United States and elsewhere, but then with the focus on getting involved, and it's so different being at a school like this than some other institutions that I've been at where you don't see the engagement. And so that is also what Northland has brought to our communities, just like our mayor said, the vibrancy that comes from having all of these mostly younger people from across our nation come and join us and learn from each other and learn from our wonderful faculty and staff. I think that's what's going to be missing here.
I'll leave it there. Barb, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
And Matt, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for asking.
Barb Lundberg is interim president of Northland College in Ashland. Matthew McKenzie is mayor of Ashland. Northland College holds its final commencement ceremony on Saturday. Are you in a Wisconsin community that has lost a college campus in recent years, whether that's Ashland or another private school around the state or one of UW's 2-year campuses? Do you notice its absence? What has that change meant for your community? Share your thoughts. You can email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. Again, that's wisconsintoday@wpr.org. More than 2,000 students representing 120 teams from around the U.S. will take part in the 41st Annual Science Olympiad National Tournament. It gets underway Friday at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
And we want to give our Wisconsin teams a proper shout-out. Way to go, Vilma Hamilton Middle School and West High School, both in Madison, and Marquette University High School in Milwaukee. Rob, what is a STEM way to say break a leg?
Titrate a chemical, maybe? Anyhow, share your stories about science Olympiads and robotics competitions. If you've participated over the years, we'd love to hear your memories. If you're a student headed to this big event or a faculty advisor, reach out to us. Share your story. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. You can also call or text us. That number is 888-642-0232.
Wisconsin Today producers include Avery Lee Rogers, Royce Podeswa, and Trevor Hook. Our technical director is Sarah Hopeful. Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. You're listening to WPR News.